Hello and welcome to Learning to Learn. My name is Ian Gibbs and this is the channel that deals with learning in all its shapes and forms. And today I'm speaking to you from my garden here in Barcelona, sunny Barcelona. And I don't know what it's like in the place where you are, but here in Barcelona, Spain, as with the rest of the country, we have been put on total lockdown. All the schools and colleges are closed. All the kids have been sent home. Many parents are also having to be at home. And basically the situation is that kids have to be at home until I don't know when. It could be a month, it could be a couple of weeks, it could be until the summer. And so basically, the situation is that we have to homeschool our kids. And I don't know if you're anything like me, but when I first heard that I was going to have to homeschool my kids, it was, the feeling was, And so after having spent a week now homeschooling my children, I've two children, almost 10 years old now. I thought it would be useful to share with you a few tips and recommendations that I've learnt in the last week, because I've also been learning quite a lot myself. And really my first piece of advice to anybody who's in this situation is not to panic. Don't worry so much. It's not actually as difficult as you might think it is. And that if you follow a few basic guidelines, a few basic rules, it can actually be reasonably painless or quite pleasant. I mean, let's face it, if you are a homeschool enthusiast, then you don't have anything to worry about, because you'll throw yourself into this quite willingly. And also, if you happen to have kids who are academic darlings and who simply love the idea of studying and working from home, then that's also fantastic. But it could be that your kids are fairly normal kids and that you aren't enthusiastic about the idea of homeschooling your kids. And so here's a few ideas that I'd like to share with you. The first thing is to bear in mind that you are not going to be their teacher. I assume that you are not a teacher, and that maybe you're worrying about, well, how are you supposed to prepare lessons? How are you supposed to teach your kids? And my first observation is that no, your role is not going to be a teacher as far as homeschooling your kids goes. Your role is much closer to being their coach, their learning coach. What this means is that rather than you being the fount of all knowledge, you are going to be the person who's going to be assisting them through their period of homeschooling so that they can get the most out of it. And a coach, coaching is actually quite straightforward. You may have got experience with a tennis coach or a fitness coach. And coaching can be divided into essentially three parts. The first part is setting up structures for the coaching to take place. The second part is based on motivation, is motivating the coachee to go through whatever it is that they have to do. And the third thing is, well, with sports, coaching is about practice. Now, with academic coaching, I would say it's more to do with activities. It's the things that the student is actually doing to learn. So you can start with these three ideas, and if you can break it down into those three parts, then you're well on the way to being a very good educational coach for your child. The first thing then, if we look at the structures, one of the things that I had really clear when I started with my kids is that to make it very clear that this time when they're off school and at home, it's not a holiday. Don't refer to it being as a holiday. It's not a holiday. The period is homeschooling. It's a homeschool day. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday are homeschool days. And keep referring to that, because that way the child will perceive that those days are special days. They're not the weekend, it's not a holiday, it's not a time for doing whatever you feel like. And what I would also recommend is that whatever timetable their school has, and what I mean from this is from when the school starts until when it finishes, then try and maintain that as being the concept of this is homeschool time. And the reason for that is that there are certain activities which are not particularly conducive to studying or learning. There are activities which they don't do at school, and therefore during a homeschool period they don't do it here either. And what I'm specifically referring to are things like playing video games, spending time on the computer, surfing the internet, social media, all of these sort of things I'm sure you're already well aware of. Quite simply, they don't do it at school, so they don't do it during the homeschool time. Okay. The second thing that I would also recommend as far as structures goes is to have some sort of basic agenda or program of activities during a homeschool day. Now, one of the things that I don't recommend, unless you can achieve it yourself, but what I don't recommend is that you try to follow exactly the same timetable as your kids have at school. So for instance, with my kids, their timetable is from 9 o'clock in the morning until 5 o'clock in the afternoon. And what I don't suggest is that all of that time is programmed academic study time. In fact, I strongly believe that when children are well homeschooled, they don't actually need the same number of hours as they spend at school. At school, there's a lot of distractions. The classes are for the children in general, and the amount of learning that's feasible for a child to do at school is substantially less than they can get out of a personal time of studying at home with their parents. And so, for instance, what I do is first of all, each day I have certain activities which I think that my children should do. What I'm specifically talking about here is reading, writing, and mathematics. And those three things, we do a little bit of that every day. And then they also have certain assignments that the school has given them for the time that they're off. To be honest, there's not that much. In fact, we've got through most of the assignments already. And we were told today, for instance, that children are going to be off school until the 20th of April. So we've got another month to go. So the assignments that they've got from school isn't that much. But then one thing that I think works really, really well is personal project work. And what I'm talking about this is that the child or the children actually choose what it is that they want to study themselves. And you don't have to study child psychology very much at all to discover that a child who is studying something that they enjoy, something that they've chosen themselves, something that makes their little eyes light up, they're going to learn much more than if they are made to study something that they're not particularly interested in. So the timetable, a daily timetable, is basically certain parts of the day dedicated to reading, to writing, and to mathematics. And then the other part of the day is spent doing project work, looking for information on YouTube, doing activities at home, doing arts and crafts activities, making things, giving presentations, making videos, anything along those lines that they choose to do themselves. And I think this is really, really important. To give you a clear example of what we do, first of all, I make sure that the television is off, the computer, any computer games that we're on is off by 9 o'clock in the morning. and that basically by 9:15, then we sit down and read together. We have a 20-minute reading period. And when I say we, I'm also including myself in this. I also sit down with my two kids and we read books individually, but all together. And this, I think, is one of the key points as well of homeschooling, that it's really important for you, the parent, to pay attention to what your child is doing. Don't just give them work and then wander off. If you have work to do at home, if it's possible, then the two of you sit down at a table and let your child do his or her work and you do your work together, but you're a team, you're doing it together. And for this reason, when my kids sit down and start reading in the morning, then I sit down and I read one of my books as well. And we share that experience together. And then afterwards, we do a dictation. I take one of the paragraphs from each of their books, read it, they write it out, and we go through the spelling. Now, one of the things that I have to point out is that because my kids live here in Barcelona, they're actually trilingual. They function in English, in Spanish, and in Catalan. So actually we're doing quite a lot of language work. Sometimes they read in Spanish, sometimes they read in Catalan, sometimes they read in English. So changing the language each day is something which is important. So they're always doing a little bit of one of those languages. So each day we're doing a dictation and they're writing out the paragraph that we've chosen in that language. And then we go through the spellings and the grammar, and anything that they find particularly difficult to spell, we make a list of those words. We choose about 5 words a day. And then we go through the spellings of each of them using mnemonic devices, which I've mentioned in previous videos. We look at find some mnemonic device so that the children can remember each one of those words that they found challenging. Then we'll probably go on to some project work so they can do something a little bit more creative or something that they've chosen to do themselves. And then later on in the day, we'll do mathematics. And as far as mathematics goes, then again, in one of my previous videos, I recommended Khan Academy. If you don't know, if I didn't make it obvious before, not only does Khan Academy have videos on YouTube, but Khan Academy also has its own website, khanacademy.org, that have courses, the mathematics courses and science courses as well, which are videos and also practical exercises that the kids do. And the nice thing about that is that when you set up an account for your child, then the work that they do is remembered, the success that they have is remembered, and they go up levels. And actually my kids, who aren't particularly great mathematics fans, continue past the half-hour time that we were going to do in maths, so they can try and get up to the next level. So they're enthusiastically studying mathematics a little bit every day. And I honestly think that by doing a little bit of mathematics every day, you can already, I can already see that my kids are making more progress in mathematics at home than they would have done at school, which I think is a very important thing to bear in mind when it comes to homeschooling. And then the other thing is the project work. Whatever it is that the kids are interested in, then allow them to investigate. If they're interested in horses, let them investigate the anatomy of horse, how to look after a horse, the business of horse rearing or horse breeding, how much does it cost to look after a horse. Whatever they're interested in, allow them to do it. For instance, my daughter, she's 9 years old, she's interested in becoming a firefighter. And so I said, well, look, if you're interested in firefighting, you need to learn about how things burn. How does combustion work? and we looked at chemistry for a couple of days. We looked at a few videos on that, and from chemistry we went to the chemical elements, and eventually we came to the atom, and she was interested in the structure of atoms. And I'm not joking. Yesterday, I sat with my daughter, 9 years old, for a whole hour. We watched a BBC documentary on the history of the atom, how it was discovered, how it was made. Not how it was made, how it was discovered, and how the concept of the atom was developed over the last 100 years, starting with Einstein in 1905 and going on through Rutherford and Bohr, going through the Heisenberg uncertainty principle, Schrodinger's cat, the idea of quantum states, quantum mechanics. And my daughter at 9 years old was sat there taking notes, really interested about all of this stuff. And she was paying so much attention to it because it was something that she found interesting. If she'd have been forced to do it at school, then she probably would have found the whole thing boring, and she wouldn't have taken any of it in. But at 9 years old, that my daughter has become interested in atomic theory is absolutely amazing. It really is amazing. So I would say whatever it is that your child is interested in, give them an opportunity at home and encourage them to explore, develop, give presentations, summarize all of these things, get them to watch videos, get them to do any practical activity which supports that, and then get them to explain what it is that they've learnt, either a conversation over the dinner table or a PowerPoint presentation, or to make a recording of it on video, anything. But once they've studied or watched or read about whatever it is they're interested in, then get them to do something with it, something creative, making a poster, making a model, anything. So that really gets us to the first point, which is the structure, and quite a bit of the activity was in there as well. And in between time, it's the motivation. The second part of coaching, which is really important, which I think we maybe get wrong as parents, and that is that you motivate your child to study in several ways. The first one is obviously by praising your child for what it is that they're doing right. Any activity that they do where they're showing interest in home study, praise it. Specifically say what is it that they're doing that you think is really good, and let them know every time they do something well. When they're doing something wrong or doing something badly, then don't criticize, don't correct them, don't say you're doing this wrong. Make suggestions. Have you thought about doing it like this? Or maybe you could improve if you did it like that, or try thinking about it like this. But focus on the things that they're doing right, much more than the things that they're doing wrong. That's the first way of motivating a child. A second one is by encouraging them. If they've got a question, if they're showing interest in something, then suggest that they do a little bit more. Say, why don't you explore this on YouTube? Why don't you try doing this? Have you thought about doing that because you'd be really good at it? Whatever. If you encourage a child to do something, whether they're good at it or not, they're only going to get better the more they practice and the more interest that they show. You can have a child, for instance, who's not particularly good at drawing, but if you say to him, "Oh, you're doing really well. I really like that picture. I particularly like this or that, whatever," and you give them praise and encouragement and say that they're doing it well, then that child will go off and make a bigger effort. And so even though they only started with an average ability, the more you encourage them, the more praise you give them, then the better they're going to get. And that really is an important part of motivation to learning. And then another thing which is a great motivator is simply by paying attention to what it is that they're doing. I mentioned before about the reading, that it's very important that you are next to them reading as well. In a way, you're a role model, but also as you're reading, you're there to witness that they are reading as well. And when you see, when a child knows that their parent is aware of what it is that they're doing, then they're much more likely to value it and keep going. So one thing that I do not recommend at all is that you shut them in their bedroom and say, look, here's a book to read, or here's a set of exercises, or here's a video you have to watch. Do it, and I'll see you at lunchtime. By ignoring your child like that, it's not a good idea. The more attention, the more value you give to what it is they're doing, the more recognition that you give, the better. If they do a project, pin it up on the wall. If they do a video, then share it with other members of your family or friends. But whatever it is that they do, allow them to get recognition for it. And then another thing that I've found works really well, at least with my kids, is that if they have a really good homeschooling day, then we celebrate at the end. At 5 o'clock, you say, right, that's the end of school. If they've been really good, then I let them spend a little bit more extra time maybe playing a video game, or we celebrate by having something nice to eat, or just basically by recognizing that it's been a really good day and give them a big applause. Recognize and celebrate when they've done something really, really well. I was going to suggest that you could take them to the cinema or out for a nice meal, but if the situation at your end is like what it is here, we're not allowed to go to the cinema. We're not allowed to go out. All the restaurants are closed, all the cinemas are closed. We have to stay indoors all the time. Well, indoors. We have to stay at our house, which I think includes the garden. I'm sure it is. So really, those are my main recommendations for today about homeschooling your kids. It's about recognizing that it's not as difficult as you might think. It's not a case of preparing a load of lessons and controlling what your child does at every moment. Your role as a parent, as far as homeschooling goes, is to be their coach, which is setting up structures, which is motivating, and which is making sure that they're doing the right activities, which are going to allow them to enjoy their homeschooling time, enjoy their time with you, because kids grow up quickly, and actually this is an ideal opportunity to spend more time with your kids. Listen to them, find out what makes them tick, and use that to your advantage so that they can start doing activities where they're going to be learning far more than they would if they were just at school, sat in a class, doing the same as everybody else. Anyway, I think that's enough for the moment. Please feel free to send me any messages, any questions about homeschooling, and I hope to be making another one of these videos soon to let you know about how my homeschooling is going and what other recommendations I can give to help you make sure that the time that you have at home with your kids while they're off school is the best possible that it can be. My name is Ian Gibbs. This is Learning to Learn. Look forward to seeing you soon. Thank you very much.